Okay, we're back. Southern Nevada Watchdogs, that's the name of a group. It formed earlier this summer to keep an eye on the proceedings of local government and especially local government spending. And two of the group's founders join me now, Tasha Heath and Melissa Letourneau. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, you started this thing in July. I've seen you've been written up a little bit in the local press. I was visiting your website earlier today, which looks like it has some kind of almost public meeting, standard type of stuff on it. We're going to meet, when's the city council meeting, when's the commission meeting, what's on the agenda, that type of stuff. What is it exactly that you're trying to pull off here? What are you up to?
What we're trying to pull off. What we're trying to do is get people engaged in their local government, getting them to pay attention to what they're actually doing. So that is really essentially the goal of what we're trying to do.
Well, what kind of things have you, since you started in July, what kind of things have you spotted, or chicanery or jiggery pokery or whatever that you've seen going on that you thought was under the radar and needed to be brought to the public's attention more? What are some specific examples?
I think the fuel tax would be the main thing that we found was not being covered properly, in our opinion. The Clark County Commission just recently, as you know, passed, it's not a fuel tax, but it was indexing the fuel tax.
Right,
that
right.
was actually raising the tax. So, and we just felt that needed to be brought to light more.
Yeah. So how did you bring that to light more? I mean, I know I've seen a lot of stuff in the media. How do you feel that the media was falling short with their coverage?
Well, how we brought it to light is we made people aware that it was going on. When the public hearing was, we made flyers to try to get people there to speak out in their opinions about it. Whether it be on our side or the other side, we just want people involved. And we felt that the media was kind of covering it one-sided for the tax, more pro-tax.
Well, or even that they would be covering it so short in time till the actual vote happened that it would be hard to actually organize people to come down and have their voice heard, basically.
Yeah. And you mentioned Tasha? Melissa? Tasha. Thank you. I'm sorry. You mentioned, Tasha, whether they're on our side or the other side. You guys do have a side, I guess, or perhaps you've been described in the press as to the right of center. Is that a fair critique?
I think that what we've said before is we lean on the side of small government and personal responsibility. Those are the two things that we're concerned about. We don't really take party affiliation necessarily.
Well, that kind of sounds like the language that you hear from people who are right of center.
Probably.
So in addition to fuel tax, have you found, whenever I look at local government closely, and I confess that it's been a while since I've done it. I actually did once, though, a few years ago, and I started looking at contracts that were given out and some of the expenditures to particularly private businesses and private sector. Is that the type of thing that you folks are going to be looking at and making sure that those bids indeed are competitive and that there isn't cronyism going on?
Well, I think that's something we see a lot of is actually the public-private partnerships. So we see businesses actually trying to, big businesses, unions and things like that. Not so much.
Unions aren't businesses.
Well, no, they're not. But it would be the people that would be getting the work, so to say. Like with the fuel tax, the people that were doing the work on the roads.
Yeah, I'm actually, though, talking about people who get the money. There's people who get the work, but then there's people who employ them, the actual businesses who get these contracts. Do you have any indication so far that any of those contracts are perhaps given in too casually a manner or too cavalier approach, and that itself is one of the things that needs to be investigated more closely?
I think that the short time we've been doing this, it just depends on which one, as you go, because we see sometimes they are more fair and sometimes they're not, and it usually tends to revolve around the public eye. How much is it being watched?
Yeah.
And that's my short experience.
Well, again, what drove you to do this, I guess I'm asking? Where do you think is the fraud, waste, and abuse, as folks like to say?
We started by our friend Daphne Lee was bringing a resolution to the city council for against the NDAA and
I'm sorry, all of you know what that is, and me too.
National Defense Authorization Act. So we went there to support her. We got a group together, to show up and speak out against it. And
excuse me, is that the defense spending bill in Congress?
It's the National Defense Authorization Act.
What is that? Is that the defense spending bill?
Well, essentially, I think at the time, what she was fighting on it was a 2012 NDAA, and it was the provision in it that allowed the government to, detain United States citizens indefinitely.
Really?
Yes.
And how did local government fit into this?
Well, I think that what they were able to do was actually get a resolution put together with the city council that's saying that they would not support that provision of the NDAA.
So if that became a federal law, then that federal law would be ignored in where?
Well,
Clark County?
resolutions are kind of just, they're, you know how resolutions are. It's like, we support this, we're going to make a resolution that we support it, so then they don't have
I see a lot of people in Nevada who resolve that they're for education, for instance, but nothing ever comes of it. I'm sorry, I digress. All right, we will be back right after this. Okay, we're back, and we are talking with Melissa Letourneau and Tasha Heath of Nevada Watchdogs. That is a new group that is keeping an eye on local government and what they spend and what they do, and even what kind of resolutions they pass with respect to the United States government rounding up unsuspecting citizens and things like that. I was looking over your website today before I came down to the set, and sometimes the most interesting things are in the fine print.
Indeed.
And I have to say, this kind of caught my eye. Southern Nevada Watchdogs recognizes UN Agenda 21, sustainable development as a global doctrine of inventory, tax, and control of all human activity that can only be carried out at the local level. SNWD, Southern Nevada Watchdogs, also has identified Agenda 21 as an immediate threat to the God-given natural right of all individuals locally and around the globe, and therefore opposes United Nations Agenda 21 and every form in which it manifests. So that's pretty interesting. And, I guess I was under the impression that you were going to be looking at government spending and make sure waste and these types of things, and then all of a sudden I'm reading about, and by the way, we're also going to thwart the global conspiracy that the United Nations has launched against all Americans.
And I had meant to actually mention when we were talking before that we aren't actually just concerned about government waste and spending. We are concerned about people's individual rights and their natural rights. So that's another thing that we're really concerned about.
I confess that if I had heard of Agenda 21 before, and I think I might have at some point, but I had forgotten whatever I knew about it.
Wow.
And so I went kind of looking around a little bit, and yeah, it came out of the Rio Environmental Summit way back during the first Bush administration, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like typical UN do-gooder stuff, and hopefully maybe try to get communities to have some bike paths and things. How is this an immediate threat, to the God-given natural rights of all individuals locally and around the globe?
Well, the thing with Agenda 21 is that it's not so much the United Nations is literally standing here doing anything. It's that they have these groups that they have put together that have begun working very closely with our municipal governments, such as ICLEI, which is actually, the city council is no longer part of ICLEI, but most of what ICLEI has done has given them a framework for
ICLEI is an acronym for...
ICLEI is an acronym for Local Governments for Sustainability. It doesn't match up, but that's the acronym.
International
And you guys are against sustainability?
Yes.
Okay.
We are against sustainable development because of what it represents. It sounds really good, but in all honesty, what sustainable development is it wants us to meet the needs of today without hurting the needs of tomorrow. And that sounds great. And I don't think any of us want to hurt the needs for tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if it means that you're going to have to lose your rights today.
What rights are we losing because of this pernicious Agenda 21 thing?
Well, some of the things that we're looking at up against is just recently, they're talking about putting all these bike lanes in, okay?
Yes.
So the idea behind the bike lanes is that we're going to narrow the streets, okay? We want people to be driving less.
So that bikers don't get hurt as much.
Not so much that. We don't want bikers to get hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm saying is that we want to get people out of their cars. We want to actually change the development of society so that we can get people in a more localized area. And this is not me saying that.
Yeah.
This is, the United Nations.
This is the United Nations
Fact and
conspirators who are saying
Right,
this.
and, conspirators, I don't know, you could call it that if you want. I think they are conspirating, but the point is that this is what they're trying to do. And if you look at that agenda, some of the things that they say are not sustainable include air conditioning,
Yeah.
okay, traveling on, paved roads.
So blue helmeted forces are going to come in and unpave all the roads and extract all the air conditioning
Well, maybe
systems
they'll
out of our subdivisions?
stop continuing to pave them. Maybe they'll stop continuing to take care of them in rural areas because that's what they don't want so much either.
What is the mechanism by which these aforementioned UN conspirators are going to force all of these changes on Southern Nevadans who, as near as I can tell, would never stand for such a thing?
Well, that's where ICWE comes in. That's where all these other nonprofit, quasi-governmental planning groups come in, and they say, hey, we're going to help you as a city. We're going to help you create your planning documents. We're going to help you implement them. We're going to give you this plan, this layout.
Yeah.
Okay, so they work in between the UN and the local areas, basically.
Our master plan is called Las Vegas 2020.
Yes, it is.
And it includes what? You have a different plan. I take it.
Well, I think that the direction that they're taking our development, okay, they're picking winners and losers in the energy sector, first of all, because they're trying to tell people that this is all we are going to support and fund is green initiatives and environmental initiatives. And I'm totally in support of environmental problems. I don't want the planet to die, but I think that there are much greater issues that they're ignoring, to which to me would be nuclear proliferation. We have nuclear waste sitting all over the place in above ground containers, which, as we know, after Fukushima is a huge problem.
Yeah. But how does establishing bike paths hamper the efforts to control nuclear garbage?
Well, everything is incremental, and of course bike paths and nuclear garbage don't really relate. Okay, that's one point as opposed to another point. But when it comes to the bike paths and it comes to all these planning things that are slowly but surely shrinking us into smaller and smaller areas, taking away our property rights and what you can do on your land if you're a homeowner, okay, those are the types of rights we're talking about. Now, this is an incremental process, so obviously it's not going to happen overnight, but look how far we've come in the past 10 years as a country.
Oh, hell in a handbasket, clearly. Ladies, thank you very much for coming on the program. I really appreciate it. I guess you won't be spending a whole lot of time in looking at how much money local government spends with the private sector, but the bike paths, we're going to get to the bottom of that.
We'll do our best.
We'll see the underside on those bike paths. All right, thanks so much for coming on. When I come back, 21st century political journalism in a nutshell, and it ain't pretty, right after this.